All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I'm so excited to have another episode here for you guys. I believe this is episode 8 of season 2. So we're slowly but surely chipping away, but it's such an honor to be able to continue to do this work for you guys that has been tuning in for season 2. You've already heard so many wonderful voices, so many wonderful people come on and just having that space for conversation and just uplifting so many wonderful different topics throughout individuals' experiences and expertise. And I'm just going to continue with that trend, and hopefully today's episode can be as beneficial and leave you with some reflective questions or, conversations for you to have with, your coworkers, your family, or your friends, but without further ado, because you guys know I can talk, I'm going to have my guest introduce himself and we're going to get on with the show.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for first, the honor and privilege to join the podcast. I've been a listener myself, and just truly honored to be able to be a guest here. And, as mentioned, just share this perspective and understanding as a conversation within a community. So my name is Emilio Carranza-Davis. I am 23 years old. I reside in San Diego, California, and I have quite a unique background, a unique story that I love to share. So similar to Michael, I could talk for days. So they're in for a treat, to say the least. But it is just truly an honor and privilege. Michael and I met back in 2019, I want to say. Is that correct?
Yes.
So just truly amazing to see how much this podcast, how much Michael has grown, and the various things that we've transformed and advocated for. I am a former foster youth myself. I'm a public speaker and soon to be self-published author within the next year. On an educational standpoint, because I think that's so vital, at least for me, as education was an opportunity. I have a unique story within education. I have a background with an associate's in communications from San Diego Mesa Community College, and I have also a bachelor's degree in communications from Cal State San Marcos here in San Diego County. So that's just a little background about me. And once again, I am excited and then some. So let's do it.
Awesome. I appreciate that wonderful introduction of yourself. We're going to dive a little bit deeper with this first question, just going off the bat. You mentioned that you were in care, so getting a better understanding with you is one of the biggest things that I do with this podcast, not just talking about all the wonderful advocacy and great things that we do in our field, but giving the audience an opportunity to get to know you and where you've come from. So to whatever depths that you feel comfortable, would you mind sharing, how did your story begin with your experience in care?
Definitely. So in order to share about my time in care, I think it must go back to my birthday. I think that's the start of a wonderful life, a wonderful chapter. I believe we all have unique stories that can be written by other authors. And what I mean by other authors, that could be various things, statistics, that could be, a story that's being told by another individual, such as a social worker, such as a judge, or even, your mom, your dad, or your biological parents, or anything along your siblings. But for me, my unique story goes about and was established July 18th, 1989, which I will say up front, I don't recall much of my childhood. But what I do recall / what I've heard and gathered from individuals that have been in my life from the beginning and then, to the young child age point, I think something very in common for those who have care, lived experience is what I like to call it, is this understanding that we will block out things for various reasons, whether that's defense mechanism or it's just something that we don't know. This is something that I wrote about in my book that I'm writing, where I kind of ask the reader, and I'll ask the listeners here, is if you don't have lived experience or you do have lived experience, are you supposed to remember your childhood? I think that's one of the first questions I ask myself. Right away, I just go back to this date or age, I suppose, of 5 years old. 5 years old, that was, I believe, my second or third time in care. Here in San Diego County, I am the third of four child. So I have two older sisters, myself, and a younger sibling. I was the only boy. So prior to me being committed with my partner, my girlfriend now of 3 years, I used to go on stage and say, a lot of people ask why I'm good with talking to girls. And it was like, because I grew up around them. So at 5 years old was the time I really recall going into foster care. I recall the time where I was in elementary school or some kind of form of daycare school. I can't even really put a pinpoint on it. And I was called to the office. And, once again, this is all putting the pieces together. I recall just a social worker taking me downtown to San Diego, these big, tall buildings. And think about it. You're a 5, 6-year-old kid, from my understanding. And you're wondering, like, one, who is this person? Why did the school let me go? And I recall sitting in a hallway, and there was just a lot of people in suits and dressed up professionally. And that wasn't the lifestyle I was surrounded by. Oftentimes it was the white tank tops, the Dickie shorts, the long socks up to the knees. It was nothing around this suit button up or let alone collared environment. So I recall this, what I learned later on, a social worker going to an office, making numerous phone calls, talking to whoever she needed to talk to. And then she had me get in a car, and it had County of San Diego, social work, some kind of terminology, a decal on the side of the window. She took me to Spring Valley, which was about 20 to 25 minutes away from downtown. At this time, I don't recall seeing any of my siblings, nothing like that. I didn't know what happened. But one thing I do recall at a young age, and to really share, is I was sitting in that hallway and questions just started going through my head. And one of the questions that went through my head was, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong to put myself in this position? And that was something I struggled with for so long at a young age, was why did I have to go into care? A little fast forwarding, I ended up going to a foster home in Spring Valley, where it was a Hispanic family, a husband, a wife, and 2 kids, older boy and a younger girl. The girl, I believe she was around the same age as me. And these are complete strangers. You walk in, I recall having my trash bag full of stuff. And, if trash bags, it's very common and known in the foster care community. So in small scope, I ended up staying at that place for, I believe, a couple years. I was there, and then I was other places. I was living with an aunt because at the time she was going for her foster care or foster parent license. And then I ended up getting adopted by her in 2010. So between 2005 and 2010, 2011, I really jumbled between households, specifically with the household in Spring Valley. I like to say it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, but it wasn't great. They made it certain that I knew I was going to be there long term, being that I was moving back and forth. It was noted, that PlayStation, that I don't even know his name, that young child, that young son of the parents, that PlayStation was his, and one thing I'll share on a vulnerable standpoint is I really didn't know how to properly shower or take a bath myself. And remember, this is like a 6, 7-year-old kid. Well, yes, they don't know fully, it just was very difficult. And once again, I didn't have that normal quote unquote childhood, being that my siblings were split up. We had visitation rights with my parents, but they were supervised, or I recall my father getting visitation rights where they didn't have to be supervised, but he wasn't supposed to let my mom see me. And I recall him saying still to this day, hey, don't tell this social worker, don't tell this foster parent that you saw your mom, because she, and remember, as a kid, you have this grown up, this father person talking to you, telling you to do X, Y. And then on the flip side, you have social workers coming and asking you questions. And it's not just one social worker. So all in a nutshell, you got too many chefs in the kitchen, passing the case file to file to file to next person. I think that's one of the biggest flaws about our system. It's a system. It's not a community. As I mentioned, I love the terminology foster care community. But when we're talking about the foster care, we're talking about a system that tends to forget about the youth, the young individual. We're seen as caseloads or case numbers or case files. And I love to gain a better understanding of why is that. And I think that's really why I stepped into the field where I'm in. All that being said, my childhood was constantly moving, whether that was moving households, moving schools. I've counted over 10 plus elementary schools and middle school. That's 10. And those are the ones I recall. And that had a lasting impact where I couldn't make friends. You know, I recalled educators and teachers specifically saying that school wasn't something I could do, you know, and I believed that for a long time. I was a kid in the back of the classroom having no care, no engagement, because I knew I wasn't going to be there long. I hated school. I hated school for such a long time. It ended up to me getting into fights, you know, it ended me getting suspended. You know, it ended up me threatening to throw a kid off a big military ship when we were going on a field trip. You know, and I say this not because I'm proud, but I share this to give a better understanding of my childhood and other people's childhoods that grew up in the system. You know, it's something that I wouldn't change. And I think that's very unique because I've gained a better perspective and understanding of what I went through. Wasn't just for me. There was a greater purpose in it.
Wow. You dropped a lot of wisdom within that, but also expressing a lot of vulnerability.
Definitely.
You said even prior to, you know, the biggest moment that you remember, you had been in care before, you know, so at 5 is where you can significantly remember, but even before then you had been in care before. And just at 5, you know, we think about the mindset of a 5-year-old, what the world looks like. But even though to just hear throughout that removal process, the lack of support, the lack of, okay, hey, this can be traumatic towards this individual. What can we do to ensure, you know, that we're explaining, you know, at least trying to explain, you know, because I can only imagine at 5, you ain't the biggest person in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I haven't been to California myself, but anywhere downtown is intimidating to a small child when you see it for the first time. Big buildings, big people, just things that's just larger than you, you know. So, and then, you know, if that's not something you understand, you know, you're used to, you know, in my case, you know, Detroit, very urbanized area, you know, people definitely not dressing up in suits and stuff like that. This is like otherworldly, you know, and to just that lack right there, for me, you know, just listening, it sounds like it was a pivotal point for you mentally, you know, and it was a later, you know, path, you know, that other people paved, you know, by their choices, you know, and the homes, you know, acknowledging that, hey, like, look, you ain't gonna be here long, don't settle in, you know, and these actions consistent, you know, and when you speak about behaviors, you know, for me, and I don't want to assume, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. For me, you know, just thinking about all the different pathways leading to, you know, sound like the only thing that you could control, you know. You know, really. If that's the only thing I can control is my behaviors, and that's the only thing that elicits a response for someone to, you know, talk to me, you know, that's what I'm going to do. You know, I already know that, you know, I ain't going to be here long. So,
and I think to even take it a step further and really share this understanding is I actually was mandated by the court because I had anger issues. You know, it's unique. And I like to give this perspective of within that foster home in Spring Valley, the husband and wife didn't really argue in front of us as myself, as well as the 2 other kids. And that was very unique because I saw a lot of violence. I saw a lot of, you know, activity, whether that's drugs, sex, you know, a lot of police involvement within my house and within my community. And that's when I was living with my biological parents, and that's within the community I was living at a couple foster homes, you know. And I'm a big believer in having, I mean, now this mindset, you know, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but having a better sense of the reason what I went through and how I managed it. You know, as I mentioned, I was mandated by the court to go to therapy. And I like to say, and this is the whole heart truth, I used to go to therapy and I felt like the therapist would just go back and tell the judge everything. So I started lying. I stopped telling the therapist what I was feeling, because I always felt like, same thing with social workers. Social workers would ask me something and I wouldn't, because to me, it was like, you're just going to pass me on to the case file. And maybe this isn't something that as a child I would connect the dots or so, but it just became a mechanism. And I don't want to say it's a defense mechanism or an offensive mechanism, but it was a mechanism to kind of protect, and in addition to kind of throw off the emotion. Because once again, I think this is something that we haven't even touched base on it. We may not even go that route as a male, the only male. You know, I couldn't really express my feelings because I had to have that quote unquote masculinity. You know, I couldn't express that I was missing my younger sibling. I was missing my older sisters. You know, I couldn't express that when it came to recess. I didn't want to make friends because I knew I was moving. You know, so there's just so many different components that are hound into it that still to this day, you know, we have this concept in psychology, and specifically within the foster care community of doing research and stuff, adverse childhood experience. You know, and I had a number on that. I think mine was a 9 or 10 on a 10 scale. You know, and at 23 years old, I'm still learning. I'm still learning to cope and to I don't want to say recover, but to rediscover. Okay, rediscover who I am as an individual, because I couldn't explore that as a kid because I was so worried. And you know, Michael, I believe all of us could attest to having to grow up so quick in the system, so quick, where they expect so much from you when quite honestly, you have so little, at least you feel you have so little to offer.
Definitely, you know, it gets to a point when trust comes with who's being genuine to you. You know, and I got to that place, you know, just like, you know, this is a job to you. This is something that is ordered, you know, stuff like that. It's not that you're asking me because you care. You're asking me to get information. You know, you're asking me, you know, to pass it on, you know, and it stops feeling as if it's genuine, you know, if it ever did, you know.
And I think also,
go ahead.
I was sorry, one last thing. I also think not just on a systematic viewpoint of like social worker, judges, lawyers, anything like that. I think also, at least in my experience, my biological parents, you know, like my mom used to share, oh, you know, we're going to get you back. This is only temporary. We're following the steps, the process, and things like that. And that gave me false hope, you know, where it began to the point where everything that you say, I'm not going to believe you, you know. It's something that I tend at the time to take it with a grain of salt, you know, because that's what the value or the credibility was. Same thing with the social worker. I had a CASA, you know, I had one good CASA, and a CASA is your court appointed support assistant, something along those lines. Here in San Diego County, they have them. And I had one CASA, and her name was Audrey, and she gave me a birthday card when I was 9 years old. And I believe I still have that birthday card, but to me, she was one of the best individuals in the systematic picture that supported me truly for what I needed and what I wanted and what I desired. And she was the biggest support person on a stranger level. You know, I had multiple social workers where they said, what do you need? And I share what I need, or I express what I need, and they didn't fulfill it, because by the time they tried to fulfill it, that caseload, my case number was already to the next social worker, or they just couldn't fulfill it. You know, so me expressing what I needed and what I desired, it became non-existent when it came to sharing my needs and desires.
Definitely. So throughout your experience, you know, how many foster homes? I don't know if you were in facilities either, you know, how many foster homes were you in? And did you age out? What did that look like? You know, because there's also a pivotal point that I do want to touch on, but I want to for the sake of understanding your story, encapsulating it, um, if you know, what did that number look like by the time you got to 18?
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, I don't know the number. And that is one of the most difficult things to kind of answer or share. And this is why, for various reasons, I was never in group homes. I know that for a fact because I was adopted at 10, 11 years old by my aunt. And I can attest to that was a different trajectory of my life. It was truly a blessing. I'm very fortunate. My aunt has played a very pivotal role in my life. You know, as a single parent, as someone that took myself and younger sibling in, as well as she had taken other family members in, as well as had her own biological kids. My aunt is still to this day one of my biggest supporters and advocates. A thank you does no justice, you know. With all that being said, and you know, I've had multiple conversations with her in the last few years. You know, I know everything that has led up to this point, it's been for my benefit, whether I accept it or not, it has. Because I could sit here, I could stand up in front of the stage and share my story, knowing that I've overcome a lot. One thing that I do outside of, you know, my professional work is support current youth that are currently in care and or have exited out of care recently. And it's because I have that credibility. A lot of people, especially when sharing my story, they're like, hey, you didn't exit out of care, or you were never in group homes. And to me, and this is my personal opinion, it doesn't matter if you were in 20 group homes, 20 foster homes, or 20 seconds in foster care. If I hear you're a foster youth, if I hear that you have lived experience, you're my brother, you're my sister, you're my friend, you're in my community, and I love you and I support you. And mean that because I think so much, at least in my experience within advocacy, as well as existing in the foster care community, there's a sense of comparison in a negative way where, oh, well, you know, this person experienced this type of trauma, and then the next person, oh, I experienced, you know, this person will say I didn't eat for a day, and this person's like, well, I didn't eat it for a month, you know. And yes, I do know there's different levels of trauma as we explore adverse childhood experience, but to me, it's not a matter of flexing this. It's a matter of recovering from it. It's a matter of processing it. And as a true solid advocate, I like to say the first thing that I do on speaking engagements, the first thing I do when I'm doing some kind of training or lecture is I would rather have you as an audience member ask me an uncomfortable position of my experience and lived experience, or, you know, comments or explore a possibility, you know. And when I speak, it's not just, yes, it's solo on my experience, but I also take the youth that I advocate for into consideration. You know, so you could ask me, what do you think about changing foster care age system support exit number, you know? And I can say, oh, well, you should change it to 18, or you should change it to whatever number, right? But whatever number I give, that's not just my experience, okay? There's a greater purpose within my advocacy project in life that I think about this youth that I mentored for 3 months. I think about this youth that I mentored for 6 years. I think about the youth that I've known for about 4 or 5 years, where I saw her graduate high school. I used to go to her basketball games, okay? And then she went to San Jose State University and the pandemic hit. And we used to meet once a month, and she struggled. She struggles to the point of not sure if college was for her, you know? And then she got comfortable and confident to return back to San Diego to get that supportive community. And she's at community college with the hopes and plans and dreams to transfer this upcoming spring. You see, I may have gotten off topic, but I hope that helps.
Yes, no, definitely. It was very helpful. And that's wonderful to hear, you know. One of the things that I did want to circle back around, you know, encapsulating, you know, your experience and what did that look like, you know, which you mentioned that you got adopted by your aunt, you know, and that's wonderful, you know, to be able to, when I think about people, you know, being connected back with family, you know, may not be ideally mom or dad or sometimes and stuff like that, but to even preserve that sense of family, you know, in some essence is beautiful, you know. And I'm going to touch back on that, you know, to be able to highlight that initial start and that initial experience of being adopted. But you spoke about something that's not really touched on, and it's not, um, and let alone being a young man or becoming a young man in society. The aspect of being emotionally available and vulnerable, you
Mm.
know, but being someone that has experienced trauma, you know, experienced a pain, you know, in some essence of abuse or neglect, you know, trying to be quote unquote a man, you know,
Yeah.
at a society, you know, or what that looked like, you know, without a full picture or understanding, you know. I'm the first person that I tell people, look, TV raised me. You
Mm.
know, I had a
No, really.
father that would have me sitting on the steps on hopes and dreams, waiting for him to
Mm.
show up. I had other people who wanted to be a male figure, and that same aspect continued to happen. Um, the most consistent males I've had in my life is the people who sat on the corner selling drugs. You
Yeah.
know, the most consistent people I had in my life was committing illegal acts and stuff like that. You know, for me, you know, I think of, you know, TV dads, you know, they taught me the values of being a man and being a gentleman. You know, it's the only thing that I knew was gonna be there at, you know, a certain time of day. I was gonna be able to turn it on, and I was gonna be able to sit there, you know, and pick up some different things, you know. But I had to get to a point where I could receive that. Initially, I
Mm.
could not receive that, you
Yeah.
know. But I remember the struggles, behavior issues, even in the aspect of we talk about relationships, you know, and being a person who's experienced trauma and locking myself away, not in a sense of purposely trying to sabotage or what have you, but because so much has happened, you know, being emotionally available is it's an aspect of healing in itself when you go through something, you
Come on
know,
now.
and it's really hard when you have the expectations of society to what it means to be a man, but also you have the expectations of people that may not truly understand trauma. Uh, so I'll be one to tell you it has been a journey for
Yes.
myself battling trying to be a man, you know, and
Mhm.
I'm putting quote, y'all can't see it, you know, like
Yeah.
quote unquote, being a man, growing up, trying to be a young man, trying to act a certain way, trying to be a certain way, and what have you. And I feel like it's really important to touch on. I was a young man that was sexually abused by a
Mhm.
male and female. I'm raised majorly by females, into getting into the child welfare system, which at that aspect, I had a lot of feminine, quote unquote, aspects about myself. I understood women, I related to women a lot more. But also, I had a sense in trying to figure out personality and identity because I was sexually abused by a male and a female. Um, there was a lot of judgment, there was a lot of bullying, there was a lot of people who wouldn't give me that time as
Mhm.
normal people do in trying to figure out identity,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of ridiculing and trying to figure out self on my own, which put me
Yeah.
through depression, put me through suicidal ideation, and many different views because, you know, I didn't ask to be sexually abused. I didn't
Definitely.
ask to, you know, to have these different expectations of how I'm supposed to walk and talk or what have you.
Mhm.
Um, but I say all that to say that, you know, young men in society, whether they're on the foster care side or on the juvenile side, have a unparamount level of expectation that's placed on them. And
Yeah, agree.
that's something that we need to uplift and highlight, that we're doing that from, it almost seems like at birth, and it's
Yeah,
not fair, because on the other side of things, when it comes to LGBTQ, or people that are, or represent different genders, two-spirited, or even just women, we're open about emotions. We're open
yeah,
about mental health. We're open about self-care. But we still have levels to go when it comes to the aspect of manhood and being a man. And what does that mean? What does that look like? Because some would argue, even when we're, being a man, that phrase, doesn't help in the aspect of emotional availability, instability, and growth. So that's something I wanted to touch on, and really share, because it's a struggle. I've been on both sides of the fence, on the juvenile justice side and the foster care side, experienced a world of abuse, and had to navigate my way to be the man that I am today. And I thank God that I've made it this far, and doing all the healing and recovery that I have, to be able to help other young men that are coming up in society throughout these systems be great in their own right. But um, it's still happening, because we're
yeah,
not having the conversation that it's okay to cry. It's okay
yeah,
to be sad. It's okay to feel, at a very young age, I was taught to shut out my feelings, and almost, almost feel like I was taught that my feelings do not matter, but everyone else's
mm.
did, So that's my little spiel I wanted to add,
No, it's great to hear, and I appreciate you sharing. And fortunately, one of my biggest highlights within my young professional career is having the opportunity to work in juvenile hall, specifically working with young males from the ages of about 12 to 18. And it is still one of the greatest achievements on my belt, because it gave me a new perspective. Myself, going back to my aunt, she raised me very strict, being that she saw various things in our community, various things in our family, and she'll be the first one to attest that with being adopted by her, there was her own challenges. For example, it did allow me to stay somewhat connected to my biological parents, but it still was a damper on the relationship with my biological parents. And to be quite honest with you, at a young age, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, my parents would only come around during holiday seasons. And what that looked like was my birthday 3 weeks late, to bring a used gift, or bring a gift that didn't fit me, some shoes, some socks, whatever it may be like. And I had a conversation with my parents a couple of years back, and I shared with them, and I said, look, like, it seemed like you guys were trying to buy your love. It didn't matter the 362 days of the year, but you showed up for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and my birthday 3-4 weeks late, and I suppose you can't complain too much. I have a pretty solid relationship with my biological parents now to this day. But as you were talking, as a man and things like that, for so long, with me being mandated by court to do therapy, that didn't quite help. And what I mean by that, because it was that defense mechanism, like, I'm gonna lie to you, I'm not gonna tell you the truth, I'm not gonna open up. And I'm sure I'm a big believer in therapy. And what I mean by that is it's a great opportunity, but that opportunity isn't going to be taken by everyone, and it shouldn't be taken by everyone. Therapy isn't for everyone, in my opinion. For me, as a young adult, I've used therapy quite a numerous of times within community college, and a four-year university, and I could currently say I'm not in therapy, but I have other therapy similar outlets, whether that's writing poems, and that's something that my book is going to have. And I wrote this book, I wrote this poem about 17 years old, 18 years old. And as I mentioned, I have a great relationship with my father now. I'm 23. And I wrote this when I was in a place where I didn't, Father's Days were very awkward, because yes, I was going to church, and I saw all these other manly figures that I looked up to, but it's very different when you have a father out there that's not your father. You know, I would see him like, hey, what's up, dad? How we doing? I'll talk on the phone, hey, what's up, dad? But like for me, at that time and within the young age, I didn't know what that truly meant, you know, or same thing on a larger level of I love you. You know, we throw those around, and now I could say within working and getting a better understanding of what those words mean, you know, it's not about yes, in the middle is love, right? But to me, the more important words is I and you. Me personally, love you. You know, I think that's what, to me, that's what I love you means. It's the I and you. The love is what holds us together, you know? So I'll read this real quick. It goes, it's titled Father Who? My father. My father was in and out of my life. My father was more like a distant friend, but not the distant friend you think of my father. My father had left a great impact on my life. The impact of knowing what it means to not be a father. My father left the position of being a father. To be a father is something I must discover on my own. So when Father's Day comes around, the word is hard to pronounce. Happy Father's Day. But the greatest impact he had on my life was having me question if I could be a father. I grew up with this belief of having to do this on my own rather than ask for help. Since I had to grow up much older than we call age, asking for help is a rare breed. I would say just like my father, but my father is just like many fathers. Can you relate? My father was a man in a kid's body. My father is someone I respected, but my father is someone that he didn't live up to the title. My father is someone I respect, but to me, a father is something greater than just having a puffed out chest. My father was in and out of my life. My father was more like a distant friend, but not the distant friend you think of. You know, and my father, you know, I plan on sharing this episode with my father, and he may not know this, but that's where I was at a young age, you know, and over the years, I could sit here as a young man. My father is one of my biggest advocates to this day. You know, our relationship has been strengthened. No way, shape, or form, or is he perfect or am I perfect? You know, he is one of the most hardworking individuals I've ever met. I think I will ever met, and I think that's where my work ethic has greatly came from. Truthfully.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Truly, I can definitely say that's something that resonates with me as I embark on this journey of relationship and building a sense of family myself. You know,
Definitely.
you know, and I'm pretty sure, you know, we same wavelength, you know, asking
Oh
those
yeah.
questions like, can I do this? You know,
Yeah.
because for me, you know, naturally, you know, hoping to have kids of my own, but more importantly, I'm hoping to, you know, foster. That's something that I'm planning to embark on
Amazing.
fairly soon, and getting licensed with that as, you know, life transitions and stuff like that, and really looking at myself, you know, I do this advocacy and be that role model for people, but it's different when you think about taking the role and the responsibility
Definitely.
of teaching someone, you know, because for myself, those words that were used so loosely, father, mother, you know, mom, dad, you know, family, you know, were skewed for me. They had trauma held and attached to them for years, you know, and to now be in a healed place and to take those words, knowing the weight that comes with them, you know, and being in another individual's life, um, there's this aspect of wanting to be perfect, but knowing that perfect is not reachable, but being, you know, there, you know, and doing your best is attainable.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, I appreciate you sharing that. Um, I want to kind of navigate, you know, from childhood, you know, and young adult to life now for you. You know, you do a lot of work and beautiful work and much needed work. So just going off, you work with, you know, people who are aged out or have transitioned out of care, you know, and just giving back with them, you know, and a world of other things. So if you could tell us what that is, give us your life now.
Oh, oh well, I just first and foremost, I love these type of conversations. It is one of the greatest feelings in my life, and it refreshes me to understand that we've come a long way. And I mean, we as in those who have lived experience, we as in those who are advocating for change, for transformation, for growth within the system that's been in place for so many years. And before I begin to share, the now point, I want to encourage anyone who's listening to this, those that have lived experience, those who just stumbled upon this podcast, to understand that you have a greater purpose. You have a greater purpose within the pain that you experience, and that may not be tailored specifically to foster care. I truly believe there's people out in our communities right now that should be in foster care, that our child welfare system just can't get into it, that there's some pushback, whatever it may be, and there's some people that, possibly believe it was their fault, but everything works out. Everything works out. So to really illustrate where I'm at now, it begins to my high school journey, junior year of high school. I really didn't care for school, anything like that, constantly moved around, and I had to write a UC prompt talking about my pretty much college applications, things like that. Although college wasn't something I wasn't planning on doing or envisioning. I mean, it was, oh, I want to go to college. Oh, I want to do this, but there really wasn't this true perspective of doing it. And one of my humanities teacher, who was my 10th grade and 11th grade humanities teacher, Colleen Green, I believe she's a doctor now. So she got the PH, so I'm gonna call her Dr. Green. Still one of my biggest supporters. And I told her, much of my success and advocacy is because she empowered me. She empowered me to be the one to tell my story, to control my story in my voice. And from that UC prompt, it grew. A seed was planted. I don't want to even say a seed. She watered the rose that was in the concrete, in the words of Tupac. I went to I graduated high school with a great GPA. High school was huge for me. We know the national statistics of 50-10-3. 50% of former foster youth graduate high school, 10% go to college, and less than 3% graduate college. And I'm hopeful that, and I'm sure that those numbers have fluctuated. Well, for me, it was, hey, let's go to community college. I didn't care for an associate's degree, but let's get empowered and let's see where this takes me. I had done numerous independent contracting, public speaking engagements within my 4-year educational journey. I recently graduated in May of 2021 with the BA in communications. And I really can't say I don't know how I got to this point. I have experience, as mentioned, working in juvenile hall, working with underserved youth, on not just foster youth, but underserved youth within single parents, first generation potential college graduates. Currently, I work full time for an agency here in San Diego, working with actually the homeless population. And the terminology homeless is actually being converted and transformed to unhoused population. Okay. And I've only been working there for almost 2 months now. Prior to that, I was working for a nonprofit here in San Diego, serving transitional age foster youth. Great mission, things like that. Something I believe in still to this day. But I was ready for my next challenge and next chapter within my advocacy on a larger scale. Stepping into this new role of being an outreach caseworker, manager, whatever you want to call it, it is one of the most beneficial and rewarding, it's not a job for me, it's positions ever in this world. And the reason for that is because I have the honor and privilege of working with these individuals that need support, and I'm a big person on keeping it real, where I go introduce myself and I say, hey, if you don't want my help, cool, let me know. I'm gonna be here. Say what's up to me, because before you're an unhoused individual, you're a human being. Before you're a foster youth, you're a human being. Before there's so much more to that person. I have never felt this sense of purpose. I've never felt this sense of belonging where I'm at and appreciation for the work that I'm doing. In the past 4 weeks, I probably have gone over 10 to 15 people off the streets into shelters. and that's a huge success, because for each one of those success stories, there's usually about 20, 30 none. Here in San Diego County, we have one of the most highest unhoused population rates in the United States. And I like to say I don't have the solution, but I'm working towards supporting the solution that's in play. I do that. I do, as mentioned, public speaking, advocating for foster youth, advocating for underserved youth, in addition to speaking to various organizations, whether that's specifically working with the foster youth population or on a larger scale, working with, this upcoming Sunday, I have a great speaking engagement, speaking to middle school and high school students that want to give back to the community at their age, because they recognize their privilegeness that their family has offered to them. That is currently what I'm doing. I'm currently working on a book, specifically sharing my experience of childhood in care, sharing my experience on a mental health standpoint, because I do believe that's so vital, as mentioned. I'm writing about my professional career of being a public speaker, writing this book. I'm speaking on things that no one has ever heard before, of my story of, I lost my grandmother back in 2018. And this has been a recovery, a process every step of the way. My grandma was my biggest supporter, my biggest person that showed me love. And I truly can say, I do believe many people love me, but that grandmother love will never be replaced. My grandmother is watching over me. A lot of people ask me this, because I classify myself as a very confident individual, that there's no one like me. When I step on stage and people see that, they may not get this understanding of the meaning behind this, but my grandmother gave me that confidence, because when I was a kid and I didn't have that confidence, she would tell me how handsome I was, or how purposeful I was, or how proud she was of me, and to me, that is where I get that reassurance that as long as I have a pulse, I have a purpose. I have a purpose with anything and everything that I do every single day. So I like to say life is good. It is a blessing to be a blessing. And in the words of Inky Johnson, a famous motivational speaker, at some point, life is going to hit you so damn hard, you need to have a greater purpose. And right now, that greater purpose is serving others and making an impact greater than myself.
Awesome. Wow. The thing is, I do these interviews talking to many other great people, with various different backgrounds, stories, and we talk about the barriers, the mountains, the hills they had to climb, and I everyone has their own story in their own right, but definitely everyone has something and continues to have things that they have to work to be present each day. And that's the most similar thing that I see, yep. Is that, to do this work and to be here, to be present, it's not easy. It's a choice, yes. But it is one of the most rewarding choices that you could make.
Without question.
And it's truly an honor and a privilege to be able to hear your story, to, hear your background, and to hear your journey to your state of healing, the switch in mindset, the strength in mindset and mentality, and the growth and the will to want to create change for others, much like myself, felt a calling, to this work, and I evaded. Oh, yeah. I evaded, tried to, what we call AWOL, trying to, hop the fence, and everything, and went towards music, went towards sports, and it just seems like it was like a police dog chasing me down the street. Oh, yeah. Having those fits right along with me, and eventually caught up, and ever since, I've realized, I'm not doing this for myself, and I think that's the same, for you, you
Yes.
realize that, my story wasn't just for me. It was for my community,
Yep.
it was for other people. And I say this, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but I say this: how selfish would it be to keep that to myself, knowing
Oh
that
yeah.
it could save one person or more?
Yeah.
I admire your work that you're doing with people of the unhoused community. Once upon a time, I was one of those individuals. When you met me in 2019, I was
Yep.
one of those individuals,
Oh yeah.
living out of a shelter. And I tell people this all the time, and they like, you was an advocate. What you should have been doing this, and the third. But I was like, God knew where I should have been, and
Yeah.
obviously He put me in DC, not once, but twice in 2019 to show me that even though you are in your darkest place, if that was my darkest place, because I can name a few other places,
Yep.
even that you're in your darkest place, this is the purpose that I have for you in your life, and I admire that, on my end. But truly an honor,
Thank
as
you.
we get ready to end out this episode. Me and you have talked, on numerous occasions in the past, but even recently, more so, just reconnecting and hearing your story. What last advice would you like to give, categorically or in general, to the audience and to the people listening to this?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think it's 2 points. And it's not so much advice, it's more of encouragement. And I live off of this philosophy. It goes, you put your hand over your heart and you feel that beat, and it goes pulse. That's pulse. Pulse results in a purpose. There's around 9 billion people in the world, and you're the only one with your fingerprint. So the proof is in the print. So I live off of the saying, pulse results in a purpose. The proof is in the print. As long as you have pulse, you have a purpose that's greater than you. And if you don't believe me, feel that pulse. In addition to look at your fingerprint and try to compare it to someone else's. Because as you mentioned, Michael, your journey is your journey, and many of us with lived experience may feel like our story has already been written, written by a case manager, written by a social worker. But in my book, I have this written, and it may be the title of this book. It goes, the story may have already been written by someone else, but I'm taking back the pen. I'm taking back the paper, and I'm writing it in a more powerful and purposeful way, because that's what it's about. And what I'm going to leave with every single audience member that listens to this, it goes to one of the best spoken word pieces I've ever done, in my opinion, and it gives me chills. It goes, raise your hand if you were told you wouldn't make it, which became fuel to the pursuit. Not the pursuit of happiness, not the pursuit of American dream, but rather the pursuit of breaking the cycle of no role models, the cycle of those we did not want to become. You were destined to be great, so do that. Thank you.
Truly an honor. Truly an honor. I couldn't have said it better. I couldn't have said it better. I purposely, if you don't mind me saying, purposely on this season, I wanted to diversify. I wanted to be more inclusive, because, just being completely honest, not a lot of males in our system are open to uplifting and sharing, their story.
Oh yeah.
And I know some really great people, and I just wanted to be more intentful in connecting with people, males, this season. And it's not to take away for the wonderful women, the wonderful people in the LGBTQ community, two-spirited individuals, or what have you. But I realized, going back in season 1 of this, that I didn't feel like I had enough. I didn't make my point, and there's a point that I'm looking to make you
Yeah.
know, and it's that, you know, no matter what shape or size, you can make it, you
Oh
know.
yeah, without question.
You know,
Without question.
it's in the title, Resilient Voices and Beyond. The beyond
Yeah.
encompass the struggle
Yeah.
that you
Oh
had
yeah.
to endure, but the
That that
resiliency to
that
keep
that many
pushing
people
forward.
didn't see. That many people didn't see. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that's where we have to share and encourage each other, because there's more to the story. There's more to come to the story. There's more to come in your story, and there's more that was in your story that has gotten you to the place you're at. And I think we can't disregard the what's to come. We can't disregard of what we're encountering and the challenges and the obstacles we're facing. As you mentioned, we can't disregard the obstacles, the valleys. You know, I'm a big believer in this. Is, may I remember how God did for me on my greatest day, on my worst day. Be reassured that anything that you're going through, you went through, there's more to come. There's more to
Definitely,
come.
definitely. Um, any last comments? And really, in this space, how can people stay connected with you? You know, I know you said that you have a book that you're working on getting out there and everything. So, how can people stay connected with you or connect with you?
Definitely. So my Instagram is EMI underscore speaks, SPEAKS, Emmy speaks. And that it was a name that was given to me actually from youth that I was mentoring. I just kept that. So that is my Instagram. You could reach out to me via email. That is information is in my Instagram bio. I'm very, very big on social media. I mix it professional, personal, because for me, I love to work, and that's where we go into. You know, I'm more than just a public speaker. I'm a human being. I'm a boyfriend. I'm a son. I'm a brother. You know, and that's just being the true, authentic self that I am. So, give me a follow on Instagram. I would love. I do offer, you know, free coaching, stuff like that. I do speaking engagements, just depending on the size and engagement, things like that. But the biggest, most resourceful way to get in contact with me is through Instagram, and or email. Just hit me up on Instagram. I'm honored and privileged to be on here, and I look forward to the great opportunities that are to come thanks to this platform. And you know, Michael, I will say this on camera: we must do a part two, because it is without grace and the humbliness in my story to have this opportunity to share. This is part of me taking back the paper and the pen and writing a story in a positive light.
Definitely, definitely, and I agree. Definitely want to have you on again. Even more so with a couple other people. I've been really putting on this vision of having roundtable discussions.
Let's do it.
And I feel that the discussion we had around the aspect of being a young man, coming into the system. I feel like it's a conversation that other people would like to have,
Oh yeah.
and talk about that to be able to uplift the next generation, with some other people. So I would love to, have a roundtable with you and some other, young men or, my seniors,
Oh yeah.
that have been through and paved the way before me. And if you guys are listening, definitely hit me up if you're interested in being in this conversation. But it's definitely something that I would love to tap into and more so. And definitely, as you get towards working and getting this book out, definitely come back. Come back
Without
and
question.
talk about it. And
Without
that was going to
question.
be great. But as you guys know, it's truly a privilege to be able to continue to do this. I mentioned my last episode that, I'm hoping to work and interview as many people as I can, trying to beat out maybe season one's number of interviews, but more so just uplifting. And looking to end around towards the end of December. And from that time, I've released 2 seasons. So I will be more so taking a little break to take Resilient Voices and Beyond to the community, to the streets. nationally and in my state, to touch these communities and to focus on the narratives that we see in child welfare and the stigmas and the labels and challenge them, because this is more than just a podcast, an interview, a talk, or, a cue point or what have you. This is um, a message that I'm trying to convey for the next generation, and the ones before that, that no matter where you come from, we all have that resiliency, we all have that voice, we all have chosen a path, and sometimes it needs a little bit of help. Sometimes it, needs some challenging,
Oh yeah.
So I'm hoping to, do some work and what have you, pending everything works out and go from there. But until then, I'm looking to interview as many people as I can to just continue to give you guys those reflective points to take back with you. I know a lot was spoke about today, and even more so, exploring these caverns cannot always be easy or is, so I take mental health very seriously. So if something in this episode has been re-triggering or traumatizing to yourself, please, before you go do anything else, take that time, debrief, do some mindfulness techniques and tools, and just reflect, um, I really, love and care for each and every one of you guys, because you guys have been really supportive. You guys have offered me feedback and telling me, just keep going, reassuring that, this is needed, this is purposeful, and I thank you all for that, because this work is not easy. Like, I'd be the first one to tell you that I'm constantly continually working on things in my individual life as I'm trying to continue to do this work. I'm far from perfect, and I'm still on this path of growing, and navigating my own life, so I just thank you guys for the support. Other, COVID, monkeypox, flu season, colds, it's out there. It's, take care of yourself. Please take care of yourself. Make sure, that you're washing your hands, wearing your mask if you need it, carrying the little thing of sanitizer, whatever, just be safe out there. We're getting close to, those winter months again. And we know, colds and flus and COVID may rise and different things like that. So just be safe. We've learned our lesson, so just be out here free willy-nilly, or what have you, just be safe, and take precautions. Outside of that, thank you. Thank you again. It's truly an honor and a privilege to have you on, and like I said, look forward to having that continued conversation. Thank you guys for listening. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. You guys have a good night, good morning, good evening, good whenever you're listening to this. Just let it be good, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.